The courts will not save us. Yes, the Supreme Court's decision in Loper is huge. It overturned the horrific 40-year-old Chevron doctrine.
Stick with me. I'm going to explain how a group of fishermen just took down the fourth branch of government and restored the Constitution. Okay, so in 1984, you had a bunch of judges at the time who were what we call judicial activists, meaning that they are not really restrained to interpretations of the law based on the Constitution or originalism or even based on like stare decisis, which means precedent that's come before. Instead, they just tend to make up law that best suits them. So in 1984, there was a ruling known as the Chevron doctrine. And in it, the court basically said that when Congress writes a piece of legislation giving unelected bureaucrats and government agencies power to oversee something, if there's ambiguity in that law, the agency, the bureaucrats, the experts, get to basically just decide what their own powers are. Not the courts, not Congress, the unelected bureaucrats. So needless to say, this has coincided with an absolute explosion in rules and regulations over the past several decades. To the point where I would argue Americans are no longer actually living in a representative government for a number of reasons, but predominantly because your elected lawmakers are not the ones really making most of the rules that govern your lives. Instead, it's what we call the fourth branch of government, a bunch of unelected bureaucrats and government agencies. And not only have they been given broad power to just make up powers for themselves because of the Chevron doctrine, it's also made it really hard to check them when they do things that are unconstitutional. Because thanks to the Chevron doctrine, which has been law of the land, if you were to try to challenge some of these rules and regulations and powers that they were giving themselves, the courts were told they had to defer to the agency. But in a case that was decided today, known as the Loper case, a group of fishermen brought a challenge to this law and they won, overturning the Chevron doctrine. This is massive. Everybody in my movement, everybody in like libertarian conservative think tank world is freaking out. What this means is that the constitutional order that was supposed to exist is somewhat returned. Congress is supposed to make the laws. The executive is supposed to have a tiny check and balance on those laws with the veto power. And then the courts are supposed to decide what's constitutional. And if there's any ambiguity in there, it should be the courts that ultimately decide and or it should get kicked back to Congress. Not only did Chevron allow a huge growth in the administrative state, it also allowed a huge growth in the power of the executive. And if you watched that debate last night and you're not convinced that we need to limit the government and limit the power of the executive, you are a lost cause and you're one of the few. So because of that, the president has been able to just go to agencies and be like, hey, I can't get this law passed, but I really want to see this go down. You guys just like make up this power and go implement it. And there's been nothing we could do about it, but now we can. One thing I love about this and similar issues when they've come up is when the left loses, their whole argument is that this is a power grab. Like, no, it's actually just restoring the power to where it was supposed to be. But like, think about that for a minute. I don't know how after 2020 to 2023, people still with a serious straight face tell us we should trust the experts. But that's literally their argument. They're like, the experts in these agencies know best. And how could the courts or Congress possibly speak to all the very complicated issues they work on? That's why they have staffs, they have research fellows, they have amicus briefs, they have friends of the court. And honestly, if the government has its hands in so many issues that the people who are supposed to be governing can't have a thorough knowledge of the issues they're governing, then that again should show you that you need to limit the government. They're doing too much. There were 3 justices that voted against this, the usual suspects, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sotomayor, and Kagan. They're like the Looney Tune far left of the court. And I want to read you from Kagan's dissent. She said, Congress often enacts regulatory laws that contain ambiguities and gaps, which agencies must then interpret. The question is, who decides of the possible readings of those laws should prevail? The court should, yours should, do your job. Roman Martinez, who was the attorney that argued the case pro bono for the fishermen who brought it, he said the court has taken a major step to preserve the separation of powers and shut down unlawful agency overreach. Going forward, judges will be charged with interpreting the law faithfully, impartially, and independently without deference to the government. This is a win for individual liberty and the Constitution. I can't emphasize enough how important this legal precedent is. And I don't know about you, but I've sure needed some light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to our political system lately.
I don't want to minimize the success here, but we've got to keep these decisions in perspective. The problem is A, the court is only as good or as strong as the people we put there. B, this was not a 9-0 decision. There was a strong dissent based on a gross misinterpretation of our Constitution and our rights, which the court fumbles all the time. As discussed in another one of my videos, links are in the description below. And C, the 1984 Chevron doctrine was the result of powerful non-elected forces that, regardless of this decision, will continue to vie for control. And Justice Kagan's dissent makes it clear that many educated elites would prefer unelected, unaccountable entities to affect policy. This is why it's imperative that we rein in and limit the powers of government. So the takeaway, yes, celebrate Loper. Be happy when the court gets it right. But do not rely on them because, like Chevron, they get it wrong all the time. Remember, one of the Supreme Court justices who dissented in Loper can't define what a woman is.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
Don't let the memory hole this. Help educate others. Hit the like button below, leave a comment, join the channel, and share, share, share. God bless America, God bless this podcast, and God bless you. Stay frosty, my friends.